says, do not swallow. Yeah. How many of your kids swallow their toothpaste? Don't answer that. And the second thing it says is for adults and children 12 and over. Wonder why it says that. Yeah, my sentence exactly. Any ideas?
Well, strangely enough, yes. In the United States, the warning is more specific. It says if your child swallows more than a pea-sized amount of toothpaste, you call the poison control center or go to a doctor. Quick. By the way, children have died about, according to Hardy Lineback, there are about 200 cases of acute fluoride poisoning in children in the United States. Some of them fatal. And that has happened usually when the hygienist or the dentist hasn't effectively explained to the child that they have to rinse their mouth and spit it out. So when they swallow it, because the stuff that's used for fluoride treatment or the amount in the toothpaste is huge compared to what's put in the water. And by the way, that pea-sized bit of toothpaste contains about what a big glass of water contains in a fluoridated city. So there's not much margin of room for error there. And yes, but about the children. Now the children, you see, if it's not effective except topically, it can't help the teeth that haven't come into the mouth yet. That's the eruption of the teeth. That's the process when they come through the place where they're formed into the mouth. Because in the mouth, they're exposed to the causes of the cavities. And if they're not there, not exposed, then of course they're not going to get cavities. By the way, that explains some of the results where there seems to be a benefit from fluoride in the water, because fluoride is known to inhibit the development of teeth by maybe a year or so in children. So that if you do the research to compare the fluoridated against the non-fluoridated with respect to cavities, and you just say, well, we'll take all 5-year-olds or all 6 years old, the ones that have been using fluoridated water have teeth that haven't been exposed to the causes of cavities. So look, it's a benefit. It's a benefit by poisoning the development of the teeth, and it doesn't last.
What is the synergy of fluoride?
What's that?
The synergetic effect with metals?
With metals, fluoride and metals. So the question is, what is the synergy between fluoride and metals?
That's one of the problems that fluoride creates for the human body is its interaction with calcium. And so the effects of fluoride in part depend upon how much calcium is in the water you drink and how much magnesium is in the water you drink. Both those will help prevent some of the problems with ingesting fluoride. We're often told that the fluoridation of water is just topping up a natural fluoride content. But that's not true. The natural fluoride is calcium fluoride. And only very little of it hydrolyzes, that is, breaks up into fluoride ion and calcium ion when you put it in acidic water. And so most of it is the fluoride is passed through your feces out of your body. And so it's not the same adding hydrofluorosilicic acid as adding calcium fluoride. And it's misleading to say, that fluoride is natural. Well, of course fluoride is natural. It's in the periodic table, right? But it's not. But hydrofluorosilicic acid isn't natural. And what is natural is calcium fluoride. The hydrofluorosilicic acid breaks up in the water almost completely, but it does form some fluorosilicates which are damaging to the lining of the stomach. That's been observed to me. And But most of the fluoride is dissociated, and when you swallow it into your stomach, and your stomach has liquid in it which is very, very acidic. That means it contains lots and lots of hydrogen ions. And the hydrogen ions join with +1 electronic charge, join with the fluoride ions with -1 electronic charge to form hydrofluoric acid. Hydrofluoric acid is neutral. Plus ion with a minus ion, it's neutral. So it can pass easily through the mucosa of the stomach, the lining of the stomach, and enter the blood, and it's distributed all over the body. And when it's in the blood or inside the cell, it can dissociate. So that those regions are exposed to fluoride ion as well as to hydrofluoric acid. Is that the answer?
Let's get some more questions here. You and then you. Yep.
Okay, I understand that EPCOR manages the water here in the city of Edmonton. They're responsible for that as well as other cities throughout North America. Where does EPCOR receive its standards or their standards as to how much fluoride to mix in with how many parts of the water? Where do they get their information from?
I don't know.
The question is, where does EPCOR get its standards for what gets added to the water? Do you have an answer to that?
No, I don't know, but generally most suppliers and most water treatment technicians are concerned with the potability of water. And fluoride or hydrofluoric acid has nothing to do with the potability of water. And the water has to be tested supposedly periodically, and many cities don't do that at the prescribed periodicity for all sorts of contents, including fluoride ion. But the decision is in the hands of the counselors, and whether it should be or not, that's where the law puts it. And speaking of law, by the way, it's illegal to add things that aren't drugs that aren't approved for specific uses to water or food or anything else, but they do it. And it's also required, I think in Alberta, as well as most other provinces, it's required that any additive to the water, the city water supply, has to be certified by the National Sanitation Foundation according to their standard 60. But it's not. Because one of the standard 60 requires that there have been toxicological studies. There aren't any toxicological studies. And in 2004, in a sworn testimony, the manager of the National Science Foundation admitted, we don't certify according to standard 60.
Okay. Let me catch another question here. Yes.
I noticed in your data, you were mentioning, and I thought that was crucial, that it seems to affect the younger people more than the older people. I know this for a fact because my 88-year-old mother had her full mouth of teeth. I am missing my upper. And a serious side effect is bone thinning. I have thinner bones than my own mother. The journal printed an article recently, Edmonton Journal, that at least 30-year-olds today and 20-year-olds have the bones of 7-year-olds already. We know the bone thinning part of it. I asked a dentist, retired one, recently, and one that's practicing in Sherwood Park. She's still practicing. She's younger. Their opinion on the fluoride issue that it's been forced upon us since 1967 in Edmonton. We know that.
So the question is,
my effects are way stronger than my mother's because she wasn't always in Edmonton. She got a good start in life in the countryside without the fluoride. I didn't. I had it bombarded from the time I started here in campus in 67 onward. So what I'm asking you, I noticed that you showed that the children are affected more virulently than so I'm concerned for her generation. If already their bones are 70-year-old bones.
so the question is there a serious effect on seniors? Is that what you're saying?
We have printed this in the Edmonton Journal. We have proof of this. We cannot convince the dentist, and I want to know why we have failed. I'd
like to let him just get a word in here.
I was going to tell you what the dentist said to me. I
answer is that, yes, I did say, and I do say now, that there are particular groups within the population, within any sizable population, that are more susceptible than the average adult to various effects. One of those groups is infants. One of those groups is people with kidney disease. Another group is young males who are at risk for osteosarcoma, bone cancer. And even a normal healthy person, like a construction worker in a warm climate, will be more susceptible because they'll drink more water than other people. And the medical officers of health of Alberta are thinking of the average healthy adult. Well, the average healthy adult is probably a relatively small fraction of our population, but it certainly doesn't include infants, or the elderly, or the diabetics, and that's why. I'll make sure.
Great. Okay, here we go. You, and then you.
Thank you. So, I'm an international student who came to Canada like 4 years ago, and I've heard like some of my international student friends who reported hair loss after a few days of, after a few months of staying in Canada. So I'm wondering, is that kind of related to the fluoridation of the water?
Okay, I'm going to have to ask for help. I don't hear very well.
I didn't hear it all either. So what is the exact question?
Hair loss. Hair loss.
Oh, hair loss. Hair loss.
And at what age?
Around 18 years old.
Around 18?
Yeah.
Wow.
They come to Canada.
What was important was that they are international students who moved here and noticed hair loss significantly once living here.
Okay. International students who moved here and started noticing hair loss. Okay. Question to you.
Oh, okay.
Short answer.
Surprise. Don't know anything about it. And I would just caution you that the same way I would caution the dentist and say that all of our children's teeth are falling out is to limit your confidence in that observation according to the number of cases here involved. But I don't know anything about that. In fact, as I recall, I haven't even heard of hair loss in association with fluoridation. Sorry.
Okay, great. We have a question here, and then who is next? Who? I just selected somebody already. Who? You. So you, and who is next? You.
Hi. Earlier you briefly touched on your opinion, why this is happening, why we're pushing fluoride against the science, and I'm curious what your opinion is, why it's happening.
The nasty.
Well, I think Professor Hall touched on that, but that book that he mentioned by Christopher Bryson is a very good book and shocking book, but it has 120 pages in fine print of documentation. He's an investigative journalist, and he spent 10 years on writing that book, getting the data to write that book, and it has some shocking things in it. Its relevance I think its relevance to the current problem is the illustration of what behavior some promoters of fluoridation are willing to undertake. And it's very revealing in that respect. But I'd rather just focus on the science and the ethics for now.
And just for your information, this is one of 2 copies of Dr. Beck's book, The Case Against Fluoride, which he co-authored with Paul Cohen and others. And if you want more of them, you can ask the library for more, or you can get them online and get one of these copies. And there's a huge action section in the back. So if you're interested, those I can't see and talk to,
indicated a 60% higher incidence of diabetes in the Republic of Ireland that is fluoridated compared to Northern Ireland, which is not, and over 400% higher incidence of morbidity to diabetes. So I
Okay,
appreciate
so let me just get that on the record here. So what you're saying is that there is a 40% higher,
60%.
60% higher incidence of diabetes in very young children.
No, not in Mary. That's another strategic area.
Okay.
People with diabetes is my first
In
concern.
Ireland,
Yes.
in the parts that are fluoridated and the parts compared to the parts that are not. And
And then the second part of the question would be related to young babies. In the United States, certain states have mandated that their water utilities must put out a message to their customers indicating that baby formula should not be prepared with fluoridated water. And so I appreciate comments in both of those areas.
yeah. So the second part of it is about these warnings that are being put, what, on your tap?
No, as a matter of fact,
Do not mix formula with this stuff.
if you own your own property, you got a message. If you were in a rented accommodation, you didn't get a message.
There you go. Okay, no, yours.
Okay. Well, the effort in Canada has been to get that requirement that message be put on the statements, the bills you get from your water. And again, doesn't inform everybody. And I'm not aware that anyone's succeeded yet in getting that done. But as for the relationship of diabetes with fluoridation, there's a lot of work done on that, and I don't think much epidemiological work, but there are laboratory demonstrations of what affects on the mechanism of control of sugar metabolism is associated with water fluoridation. And what you mentioned, Ireland has a countrywide mandate, mandatory fluoridation. About 90% of the population, I think, is fluoridated. And Declan Law, who is not a dental researcher or scientist, but a technician who's trained in science of water quality and that sort of thing, has done extensive work on comparison of data about the prevalence of certain diseases in various countries. But he started out comparing the Republic of Ireland with Northern Ireland on the grounds that he thought those populations were very well matched, except for fluoridation. You know, genetically, in terms of diet, and all that sort of thing. And he has a list of tremendous differences between Ireland and other countries. Diabetes is among them. And and he also has looked at the literature that I mentioned in terms of the biochemical processes that might explain that. And with respect to infants and children who are being given formula, the Canadian Pediatric Society has been wavering on that. But even the dental association say that children under 6 months shouldn't get fluoridated water. And the reasons for that are that infants will drink much more water than adults per unit body weight. So they get much more fluoride per unit body weight than an adult would using fluoridated water. The other reason is that the infant is in a furiously developing situation of developing all the tissues and organs and everything. And for example, the effects on the neurological system occur during the development of the neurological system. So that's a particular concern. And I think it's one of the most grievous faults of these so-called professional organizations like the dental associations and Health Canada and all those is not warning parents about this, not even admitting that this occurred, that this is a problem.
Okay, I agree to take one question up here, and then I think you have a question, right? So, there it is.
I'm aware there are filters, fluoride filters on the market. Are those effective, those fluoride filters? Are they boiling water, eliminate the fluoride?
Yeah, there's
Wait a minute, okay, that's answered.
there's some filters that are effective. The kind you can buy in the supermarket, you know, with a carbon filter, that doesn't do it. And so the two, there's several ways which I won't mention because they're not really practical for people to use. The two that can be used in your home that are effective are distillation and reverse osmosis. And distillation is more expensive to do than reverse osmosis. Reverse osmosis is just a filtration under tremendous pressure through a particularly fine membrane, so that almost everything except the water is taken out of it. And the reason that fluoride can be filtered out because it's got atomic number 9 and it has electronic structure, orbital structures that makes it very small, but it also makes it so that it has a very high electric field around it, and that attracts water, which is polar molecules, so that you're getting positive and negative interaction. So that the fluoride ion is it's in the center of a big bunch of water, so you can filter it out. But it takes a very fine filter, and you can establish those in your home, or you can buy it, and even in large bottles. It's not cheap, though, either way, and not everybody can afford to do that.
Okay, let's just see. There was one question I wanted to take in the top row there.
Yeah, I was just wondering about if there's any data on sublingual or absorption to the gums of fluoride in toothpaste.
I couldn't quite understand.
Sublingual absorption, that's under the tongue.
A sublingual version?
No, absorption.
Absorption, when you're using the fluoride toothpaste?
Yes.
So the question is the tissue absorption in the mouth when you're using fluoride toothpaste?
Yes. That's a factor to be considered, certainly. We don't have very good measurements of how much fluoride is absorbed through the mucosa of the mouth, the gums, and the cheeks, in relation to the concentration of the solution in the mouth. So I can't say much about it, but it surely occurs. So that's another reason, you should rinse very well after using fluoride toothpaste, and vigorously, because you know how the teeth are. There's a lot of nooks and crannies, and you've got to swish a lot of water around to get those places washed out. But it's important to do.
So one thing I want to mention is there are petitions being circulated right now. If you haven't seen one, look for a board that's running around the room with a person attached. And Dr. Paul has a question, I think.
Well, I want to reflect on the notion of we're thinking about filters, and why should we accept that the onus is on the citizens to take fluoride out? That's very complex. Fluoride is anti-choice. It's much easier if you really want a little bit of fluoride in your water. The city could easily make it a little tablets or something available. It's much easier to put it in than take it out. And taking it out, what about our baths? What about our gardens? I mean, this is thousands and thousands of dollars being required if you want to stop poisoning yourself and seeing your kids poisoned. And by the way, this is a teacher of many doctors in Alberta. As last I checked, being a doctor in this society is pretty prestigious. Being a teacher of doctors is pretty prestigious. It seems to me that when you have a doctor of doctors here in Alberta saying that that this is poison. And this hurts people. There are legal consequences. Is the city of Edmonton City Council ready to be sued? It seems to me these councillors are set up as the first line of defense. Is Dr. Kong so convinced of the rightness of his position that he would stand up and say, sure, we're so sure that there are no health risks involved that we'll stand behind this if we know we won't be sued, so sure, sue us. This woman here, you bring up your own issues, your own health issues that you feel you have. You know, City Council needs to be looking at you in the face and saying...
I went to my alderman, he said, my parents voted for it in 67, it's good enough for me. I mean, I'm serious.
Yeah, but just to, you know, to think that a couple of high-profile people are going to carry this. No, this has to be a collective effort. It can't be the same person writing to the paper every day. It needs to be dozens and dozens of names, different organizations, different personalities.
And there's so much that you can learn. They're making an Edmonton movie with testimonials. Would you like to be giving a testimonial? Hello? Would you like to give a testimonial? You can call or email the website email address. You can sign a petition online as well as live here. And I'm told that if the councilors really believe that there's a lot of public interest in this, that can make a difference. Okay, so that's the pitch for we deserve to say more.
Talk about action items for against fluoride. So most importantly, we need to all contact our city councillors. As Barbara was pointing out, and Dr. Hall, it cannot be the same one person each day writing to editorials and into our councillors. We all need to make sure that they're aware of our concerns. Also, we are circulating a petition for you all to sign. Please do also visit the webpage redeservesavewater.com and sign their online petition, and direct friends and family to the webpage as well, because it has a lot of great information on there. So we need your help to realize this goal. Please visit both of our tables and get linked up with our community so we can continue to contact you, and we can work together, and we need to build alliances and friendships so that we can tackle this and other issues.
Okay, who's next? We got one here. And then I'll take the blue shirt and then back row.
Could you comment on the estrogenic effects of fluoride and the population breast cancer?
The which?
Estrogenic.
Estrogenic effect. Estrogenic effect of fluoride. And specifically, she refers to breast cancer.
Yeah, the short answer is no, I can't. I don't know much about that. I know that for a variety of cancers, a widespread of cancers, there's some evidence, epidemiological evidence of an association with fluoridation, but is not much evidence published in peer-reviewed journals, and I really can't offer you much on that. Sorry.
Blue shirt. Blue shirt.
Yeah, you mentioned that fluoride calcifies your pineal gland, but
You have to speak louder.
how do I get fluoride out of my body?
How do I get fluoride out of my body?
Step number one is stop putting it in. Okay? bit of it, but not all of it by a long shot. When we ingest fluoride, about half of it for an adult is excreted by the kidneys. The other half, roughly, is sequestered in the body. 99% of that in bone, but a lot of it in the pineal gland, and some in the kidney soft tissue. Now, in bone, it's fairly well fixed, so it will interchange with blood very slowly. But in the other tissues, it can be eliminated to a large extent from soft tissue. But again, there's little primary research on that.
Back row.
Like a city like Edmonton or Calgary?
Louder.
A city like Edmonton or Calgary, what's the estimate that they would spend to fluorinate the water every year?
Okay, so a city like Edmonton or Calgary, what would they be spending each year?
The cost.
The cost for it.
Well, okay, the cost would have two major components. One is the operating component, namely the purchase of hydrofluorosilicic acid. In Calgary, which fluoridated a city of 1.3 million plus air drink, they were spending about $750,000 a year on just the chemicals. But shortly before the council stopped fluoridating, they were faced with the problem of renovating the equipment to fluoridate. Now, we got estimates from different city officials, the technicians. The estimates varied from $2 to $6 million. Now, that would be a one-time capital expense, but it doesn't last. Every few years you have to do that. So it's a big expense, and it's not often completely recognized.
And over here, finally, we're getting to this section. Sir, back.
Just kind of a two-part question. You mentioned city councilors and how a big part they play in the role of fluoridation. Is there any current councilors who support the defluoridization? And also, part two of the question is, when was the last time this was brought towards council in Edmonton?
Okay, so these are questions pertaining to Edmonton.
Yeah.
First question was, are there any councilors supporting defluoridation, getting rid of fluoridation? And secondly, when was the last time it was brought before council? Anybody know? He doesn't know. Anybody know?
It's been a couple of years since I read about it in the paper when Calgary did it. That was the last time I heard that it was brought before council here.
Okay, so it sounds like
swept it under the rug.
it's been a very long time.
It's never been.
Oh, here.
Actually, it's never been brought to council. That's why we're depending on all you folks here to phone your councilors and all your wards and just pester them. And we can make this happen in Edmonton if we just get on the telephone and start calling them. I've already spoke to all 73 of them before the election, so they know who I am, and they'll know who you are once you phone and say your piece to them. And you don't have to be really nice neither, because fluoride's not nice.
You do still attract more peace with okay, I've been short on this side, so certainly Beck.
Dr. Beck, I think you kind of said you weren't knowledgeable on the sort of, who is benefiting from fluoridation. That's what I don't understand. Dentists, it seems to me, if there's fewer cavities, their business goes down. Why would they want it? Who has wanted this and why? Is it just money?
Well,
Why did dentists want it? Why did dentists support it?
there are several aspects to that question that I can speak to. One is that dentists make a lot of money treating dental fluorosis, and it sometimes costs $1,000 a tooth, and it has to be done again after some years. That's not a nice thing to say, but as something that is motivating, I don't know, but that's a fact. They make a lot of money on treating dental fluorosis. Some of them do. The other is, why don't they oppose it if they don't think it's a good thing to do? Well, in the United States and in Canada, they are threatened with losing their license to practice. I've witnessed that in one state in the United States via television. I wasn't there. I know of a dentist in Alberta where that applies to. I heard the threat in Ontario from the chairman of the licensing board. It may not be direct, like we'll cancel your license if you publicly say you don't think we should fluoridate. But in subtle ways, it's said. And many dentists will admit that is why they are silent on the issue. The other thing is that dentists, aren't scientists, with a few exceptions, such as Harvey Weinberg. They're not scientists. They have the same trouble evaluating the science that the counselors do. And they're busy, just as the counselors are. And it takes time to do that, especially you have to learn the tricks and rules before you do it. So that's about all I can say about it.
So the dentists are the main component of fluoridation in North America?
Yes, through their associations, like the
question was, are dentists major opponents to fluoridation?
Oh, opponents to fluoridation, no.
I mean, proponents.
Proponents, yes. Yes, they are. And they speak mostly through their associations.
I heard that some dentists have done some studies eliminating fluoride from their patients' regimes, diet, and various things. And there was something related to symptoms that came out of that. Is that correct?
Well, you may be confusing that with a sort of panoply of acute sensitivity. That has occurred, and usually involves gastrointestinal symptoms, pain, headaches, aching joints, and that was recognized back in the 1930s, principally by Dr. Wallbach, practicing in Michigan. He was a specialist in allergy, but he became suspicious of that as being caused by fluoride. So what he did, and between him and other physicians, this amounts to hundreds of such cases, where they got the permission of these patients to have them stop exposure to fluoride as much as possible. And then when they did that, their symptoms went away in a week or 2 weeks. And some of them, they got the patients permission to reintroduce fluoride into their diet without their knowing when that was going to occur. And when they did that, within a few days or a week of doing that, they started having those same symptoms, which again stopped when they stopped using indefinite fluoride. Now that's not a large-scale study. It's not very systematically done, but it's in some respects quite convincing.
Okay, how are we doing? More questions? Okay, in the back row is green.
In terms of ingesting fluoride and body chemistry, when a body is either acidic or basic, and when it comes to people that eventually get cancer down the road, do you think that fluoride may be a component to causing the body to be more acidic and hence have a better place for cancer to thrive in an acidic environment?
Let's get the question here repeated. So the question is, do you believe that the fluoride contributes to a higher acidic condition in the body that would down the road make you more susceptible to diseases like cancer? Is that fair to say?
No, I don't think that the acidity of the body fluids will be much affected by that, because there are other fairly precise regulators of that condition of the blood. That's not to say that it's unrelated to cancer. I think I may have mentioned that there's some data to suggest, epidemiological data to suggest that it's associated with higher incidence of various cancers. But it's something that needs a lot more study before we can make much of a statement on it.
Okay, here, Greg.
Isn't there any consideration of these communities that have stopped fluoridation to use them as a control sample, or a community that is considering defluoridation as a control sample, proving that the fluoridation has no effect? And I guess the core question is it being confirmed that the water supply is still not being fluoridated? Those communities have asked it to not be fluoridated. And I guess the bottom line is, would any of that data that showed fluoridation doesn't work have any real impact on the counselors or that making a decision?
Well, it's kind of a political question, huh?
Yeah. Well, that's a political problem.
Okay, the question is whether the counselors would be impressed by the evidence of the debilitating effects of fluoridation in the water supply after they had actually, or some group of counselors preceding had gotten rid of the fluoride. Is that what the question?
Correct.
Okay. Somebody have an answer to that? Me? No. Well, what I was going to say was counselors change and people forget. And, you know, what is the statement, the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. You have to pay attention to what's going on in your community. So if you don't want to, if you want to really work on it here, get involved. If you don't want to work on it here, sit back and see what happens. But it isn't going to go away permanently until the movement really sweeps through North America. It's been very slow in the U.S. and a little bit better in Canada.
I would like to add an angle to that. I think I spent about 11 years talking to counselors one-on-one or in small groups in Calgary. And when it came up to the end of fluoridation, two of the counselors said, not publicly, but they said what really did it was an ethical issue. We were overwhelmed by the science because we had these so-called experts coming from both sides of the issue, contradicting one another, and we are unable to see which one is right and which one is wrong. But the ethical question is very clear, and that's what moved some of them. The vote in Calgary was 10-3. And there were two absences. It's a 15-member council. And so of those 10, several of them were mostly convinced by the ethical question. So you have to, you know, be understanding. You should talk to your counselors or send them messages, but acknowledge their problem and see if you can help.
That's right. It is a collaborative approach because they want to do the right thing, believe it or not, even if they're opposed to this at this time. And going for where's the information needed and what kind of information is needed. I understand there will be some templates and little things to put in the emails to counselors. So really getting that moving will make a difference. So those will be on the Safe Water website. Yes.
I want to also extra say, when sending letter to the council, we don't send one. We make copy 12, plus mail is 13, and we send to all of them. Not one. We never will. I'm the former candidate this year. But my question is also to Mr. Professor, do we have any support, any issue like this one from those most four important section, social section of the people like politicians, medical people, justice people, and spiritualists. Do we have any support from them, especially from the leaders who are already up for?
Are you asking about Edmonton?
Yes, yes. Do we have any support right now? Those with power?
I can't identify support from any of those groups, as specific to those groups. I'm sad to say that the politicians are mostly interested in getting reelected. And I can't help but say, that I don't think their reelection is more important than the health of a million people. There's a very small special group that is interesting, and that is the water treatment technicians. Some of them, that's a handful on the whole continent, right? But some of them are dead set against it. In the United States, I think there are one or two cases of water technicians who refused to do it. Got fired, of course, but they refused to do it. Because they saw it, I think the way I see it, that their job isn't more important than the health of all those people.
About like doctors. Simple doctor, medical doctor, he has the social and we can say even political.
Okay, so I wanted to repeat your first point, which was if you're going to write to council, write to each and individual councilors, not just one handwriter. So you just keep those, you get more mileage out of your communication. Sir, I think we'll take maybe one more question after this, and then it'll all be closed. Okay, I'll get you for the last question.
Do the proponents of fluoride, do the proponents actually defend the ethical question, or do they just
proponents?
Yeah.
So the question is, do the proponents actually debate or ever discuss the ethical issue?
As I understand your questions, do the proponents ever raise and discuss the ethical questions?
Do they have the answers to the ethical question, or do they always just focus on the medical side? Like if we say it's unethical, what do they say?
Oh, the best technique, the most consistently used technique is to ignore the question. And I've had that happen both orally in front of council, and I've had that happen by letter. And they just say, and by letter they say, I won't communicate with you on this issue anymore. And so well, I guess that's about, one time a response to raising an ethical question was it would be unethical not to fluoridate. And that has a certain logic on the surface. If you think this is doing everybody a great good, and that you think that if they didn't have it, they would suffer some problem, then it would be unethical to withhold it. But of course, that doesn't apply to fluoridation because they have other ways of getting it if they want it, and so on. So, but that's the only case where I've had an Alberta Health Service medical officer supposedly confront the issue.
Okay, last question, last one.
Just speaking to this gentleman's question before,
I can't hear you.
dentists speaking up about fluoride and why we should have our water supply. It seems to me that it makes sense that the main reason for having our water supply is to make us better. So why not have them push that agenda? But when you realize that Prozac, the main
I just want to thank everyone for coming out. Really appreciate having such a great turnout. And all your counselors, let's get at it. And let's make this happen. We can get it out. We can all do it. Let's try. Yeah. And I have a presentation here for the doctors. I have a presentation. Dr. Hall wants to come up here for a moment.
Dr. Hall?
Dr. Hall, if you would like to come up front for a moment. We'd like to thank you doctors for taking your time to come and help us educate Edmontonians. We thought that a little gift for you folks to take your time to educate us here at Edmonton. And we just decided to serve you with something that you're probably aware of. Or somewhere in your class you must have seen this before. Well, for sure, you're welcome. You're welcome. And just a little token for all your hard work and your trip up here, your safe trip up with that. Really appreciate it. And Dr. Hall, we appreciate it very much. You're welcome. And hopefully we can do this again for the City Council. And next time we'll be active and do what I want. For sure. Thank you very much.